And we're live. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the Assets Masterclass with the one and only Gigi. You're tuned in to CSX Masters, Ace Quiz Biz, or community led classes wherever you're joining us from. You are at the heart of Ace Quiz Biz YouTube channel. But welcome back, Gaurav.
Hey, greetings and thank you for having me again.
Yes. So you can tell how much people are interested in this session that we are dot at 6 o'clock our time and 25 people are waiting on the
Oh,
stream for it to start. So, and that's just on YouTube. I mean, we're not
I'm
talking
scared.
about LinkedIn. You're famous, man. People like when you talk ITSM, right? And like your LinkedIn bio says the ITSM guy at Atlassian now. So yeah, we have come full circle. You were
Yeah,
ITSM guy always, but ITSM guy at Atlassian is a good tag.
yep, it's a good new one for me as well,
Nice.
right?
But we got really good response from the first video where we basically just covered the basics of Atlassian Assets. If you're joining us for the first time in this Assets Masterclass series, we are digging deep into Atlassian's ITSM and ESM solution, JSM, but picking one specific aspect, which is the assets, which is, I would say, one of the most complicated and the least understood aspect of that service management section. But Gaurav shared the basics and the frameworks and why and how of it in the first video. If you've not seen it, definitely recommend watching that. I'll put that video link in the comments in a minute as well. But in the interest of time, I'm just gonna talk for one more minute, then hand it over to Gaurav. Please know that this is a very interactive session. Please use comments liberally. Ask any question that you may have of Gaurav, even if it is how can I create assets. He will surely respond. Uh, but other than that, if you have any specific use case type questions, please use the chat again for it. And yeah, let's have a very good session. Gaurav, I give it over to you. I'm gonna go off video and
All
spotlight
right.
you and screen sharing. So
Thank you.
once
Thank
again,
you.
in the chat, I'm gonna put the first link in the comments. So if you wanna go watch it after this session, not right now. And yeah, do subscribe to Atlassian community-led classes, Quiz and the CSX Masters. This is being driven from the community called CSX Masters, where we talk mostly about ITSM, ESM, AI in the Atlassian ecosystem. With that, thank you so much, Gaurav. Over to you.
Thank you and welcome back everyone. Hope you like the session one and that's where we have some people here. I hope that. Uh, Talking about what we discussed last time was how to set up assets or what a schema is, what an object or an object type, what are attributes, so on and so forth. So we discussed about how laying down the foundation of it. Now we'll talk about operationalizing that. We have the foundation, we have got everything done, how to work with it. That's what the key agenda for today is. And before we dive into the agenda for today, I remember there was one question from which was put on the video or as a comment for last time. It was regarding how do you get data from one of the data sources. You had a lot of attributes. How do you get all of this? So I'm not going to deep dive into that. The short answer is via data manager. That's the short answer I'm going to leave you with. The reason is the next session, which is session three, which would be in a couple of weeks from today, is about data ingestion, data governance, and driving all the aspects around data. So that's where I would leave you. I know it's kind of a giving something and not giving you the complete details, but yeah, we'll definitely cover this one in the subsequent session. That's where I'm leaving you right now. With that said, I would move ahead and we'll quickly see what we talked about. So last session we talked about object types, what are the relations, ownership. We talked about it a little bit, but we'll go in depth in details of it in the subsequent session, right? So now let's talk about we have the schema. Now, if we the idea is what good is that schema? or how do you drive value out of that schema? Until unless you have a process or a workflow defined which consumes that schema is nothing but a glorified Excel sheet or a glorified table which talks to two other tables. That is what it is. That's where you need to think about what process you need to model and how you want to model that process on top of it. So I know the slide says workflow, but essentially it's a process. And workflow is nothing but your implementation of a process. So that's what it is all about. And that's what we would talk about in the whole session today. And this is what is the agenda for the day. We are talking about what are the breaks or what are the workflows we can cover, without breaking down the context. Then where does AQL come into play? And for everybody, what is an AQL? We all would be very familiar with the term called JQL, which is Jira Query Language. And AQL is nothing but assets query language. What it does is it lets you query assets or the objects within assets, right? Then we'll talk about assets in various scenarios, be it requests, be it issues, be it automations. And then, like always, like last time, we'll talk about examples beyond IT. All of us are masters at doing it in IT, but what about beyond IT when it goes into the realm of, let's say, uh, HR, finance, legal, uh, pretty common ones. We all have heard about it. How about managing artwork with assets? So we will think about it. We'll brainstorm a bit about it. I would like to hear what everybody thinks on those terms, right? All right. So now let's think of a scenario, and I believe we have been discussing this scenario since last time. And again, somebody requests for a laptop. Very simple, very straightforward, very standard request. How do you address this particular scenario? Somebody is think of an enterprise level organization where you have got maybe five different vendors who are supplying you laptops, two or three different manufacturers from whom you procure laptops, and then an employee stands up and says, hey, I need a laptop. So when the employee has to submit that request, how do you ensure that you get all the required data right up front from the employee? And to gather that data, to capture that information, you present the real and actual and latest information for them to select. To elaborate on this, let's suppose today we are supporting two different laptop models, but historically we have been supporting four different models. Two of them are obsolete now. If the employee is given all four options, they are free to select all of those. They are free to, and then becomes the finger pointing thing or the delay. That's where the delay comes in. If they select the wrong model, you'll go back to them. The agent would go back to the employee stating, hey, you selected the wrong model. Please choose from these two. And then the employee can say, or the requester can say, hey, I got four options. I chose one of them. So that's where the delay comes in. Similarly, on the agent front, we talked about this scenario. Somebody requesting a laptop already has multiples. How do you see them? How do you surface them right on the ticket? And similarly, how do you get the approvals? How do you ensure the right approver is presented? This is where the operational part of setting up the custom fields, which are asset type custom fields, comes into play. So quickly jumping onto the practical side of it, I'll get into those details. Before that, any questions till now or any questions from the last time if we have from the audience? I've stopped sharing because I just wanted to see if there are any questions on the chat. So
I
yeah, let me know.
Yeah, nothing yet, Gaurav.
Great. All right. In that case, let's go back to sharing the screen. Okay. Now, if you see this particular request type, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. What we are trying to do is we are trying to request a new notebook, basically a laptop. So, if you see this uh, kind of field, it says supported models, and it is fetching data from a particular assets field or asset schema, and it is giving us three options. If you look at it, it is giving us MacBook M415, um, then it is giving us MacBook Air M4 13 inches and ThinkPad. So what it is providing me or providing the requester is upfront that okay, these are the supported models which are available today. But think about it, are these the only models which an organization or an enterprise would support? To give you an idea, let's go back and look at what our schema says. So basically it is fetching data from one of the schemas, and I'll quickly go to the schema and show you. So like last time, I'm into the employee assets schema, and if you see here, we have got four different models which are supported, right? And the difference is again in the attributes. So if you see, we were surfacing M4 15 space gray, M4 13 inch, but this one MacBook Pro 13 space gray was not being surfaced. Reason being, it is retired. So maybe traditionally we were supporting as an organization, we were supporting this particular device or this particular model, but we are no longer doing that. So what it does is, without you needing the or having the need of deleting anything, you can surface the right information to the customers right on the top where you need it. And to give you an idea how you set it up, right? So we'll come to that in a while. Let's go back to the slides. We talked about all of this. Let's talk about where the workflow breaks without context. So again, as we talked about, if it had the one which is retired, if we surface that also, what would happen is a lot of people would may select that, and that would create a lot of friction. Where would the friction come? The friction would come first off in the request forms, because people can select anything or everything which may or may not be supported at the time. So how do you ensure that you do not have stale data? That is something which we would discuss later on as well. But when I say stale, not in terms of obsolete, but rather something which is not required or which is not available today, right? Then in the issue view, it would hamper the agent productivity. How? Because it may surface incorrect information which would lead to uh, the agent taking decisions which are not right out of the box or which are not on the correct information. And again, automation, basically what automation does is whatever it can get its hands on. So if our AQLs, if our uh, filtering criteria is not correct, then it leads to a lot of problems, right? So let's see what how we do it. We build the context which we did in the last session. Now we surface that context. We are seeing what we want to provide on the screen, and then how to act upon it, right? So I'll come to this in a bit, but before that I wanted to give you a glimpse of what an AQL is. So an AQL is very similar to your JQL. That's the asset query language, pretty similar to the Jira query language. What you can do is write a query and search for various details of the asset, of the object type. To give you an idea, let's go to the configurations of a particular assets type field. So I've got two here. One is suggested laptop, the other is supported laptop models. So I'll open up the configuration for supported laptop models, because that's the one we saw here, supported models, right? So if you see here, uh, I can zoom in a bit if you want. Is it properly visible for everybody? Sajat, any? Uh,
Yeah, yeah. No, all good.
Great. All right. So if you see here, what we have done is we have selected the schema. I can edit this as well so that it's better for everybody. So what I've done here is I've set up the schema from which I want to pick up the data. Then I'm filtering out, I'm limiting the scope. I'm telling which particular object type I want to surface, right? And then this is the filter scope. Next is filter issue scope, which is the actual AQL, or where I'm actually limiting from this particular from this particular scope. So what I've done is for top to bottom. First, I've selected the schema. So if you remember, we had 10 or 11 schemas in the system. Let's quickly check that again. So yeah, we have got 12 schemas right now in the system. So we have selected the IT employee schema, employee asset schema. From that, we have selected the object type, which is the supported laptops. That's step two. Next is step three, which is for the issue scope, for the custom field when it is being surfaced in a particular issue. What is it that we want to surface? We want to surface wherever status is not retired. So this is where the setup of the schema comes into play as well. How we have defined the life cycle, or how we have defined a particular attribute. What do we want to surface at what point of time? What could be utilized? So based on all of this is how we define the schema, and then we design our AQL, right? So once we have done that, what we are doing here is, if you see what we want to display, we want to display the name, that's the device name, and we can have multiples, right? And on this is on the custom field view when it is published, or when it is provided for the user to select a value. And then in the issue view, when an agent is looking at the issue, w- would it do you want the same fields to be shown, same sequence or a different sequence? So you have that flexibility for visibility. So you want your agent to see additional details rather than your customer to see all of those details. What we are presenting to the customer is different, what we are presenting to the agent is really different. And then towards the end, we can select that whether we want to have multiple objects or a singular object. And I'll show you another example for multiple objects as well, right? So this is how you set up your first level of interaction with your assets custom field, where you have got your very simple AQLs that, okay, my object type is this. It is pretty similar to, if you look at it, my project is ITO or ITS, for example, in this case, right? IT support, or maybe platform development, whatever. So it's very similar to that. And if you want to learn more, you can simply click here and it would open up the complete documentation for it. You can refer it. It's a really good documentation to start off with. It gives you a lot of examples how you can structure your AQL, how you can define what you want to select, how you want to select, and what are the, if so there are quite a bit of limitations as well. So what limitations do we have? You can look at all of these here, right? So I'll take a quick pause here again, and would love to get your thoughts or your inputs if you have had any scenarios where you struggled with setting this particular field up, or you face some issues with it, or you're good with all of this.
So we have one question which says, isn't filters issue scope used to compare asset objects attribute values to work item field values? At least that's how I used it until now.
It can be used for that as well. So it's a very valid point, which whoever raised it did that. So what you do is, when you talk about work item scope, so what you have is two different levels of scoping. One is filter scope, that, okay, in this particular custom field, what I want to show. Then if I want to change my filter based on the work item, right? Who is the, let's say, who is the assignee of this particular ticket, or who is the reporter of this, I can do that in the work item. So it's not required to do that in that only, or rather work item scope is not only limited to that. You can have other filters just like this one in this particular filter, but it would provide you that level of clarity as well. So the other example which I wanted to show you is, okay, employee assets, that's the field name, object custom field name. Let me quickly show that. Where did it go? Yeah. So if we open the configuration of this one, hmm, I am missing that one. So maybe some other field is there. I don't recall the field names. Uh, I might have messed up something, but you are absolutely right. You can do that in this. You can set it up on reporter and all of those things. You can do that. Any other questions on this?
As of now,
Right.
no. I think we only had these two questions, Gaurav.
Okay. Is it like too complex or too technical, which we are talking about? I hope
From an
not.
episode two perspective, I don't think so. I think we built enough context for that. But like
Yeah,
somebody who might be joining for the first time, you might feel that. But if there is a question like that, feel free to answer that in the ask that in the chat, and Gaurav can give you that context.
absolutely. So, in case you're feeling that we are going a little too complex or too technical, feel free to share that feedback as well.
But it is technical, right?
It is
People are
supposed to be
saying
technical.
I
We
need
talk
more
about assets,
complex,
right?
right, Jacob?
So it is supposed to be technical because we have picked up probably one of the most technical aspects of GSM
That's right.
to kick off it, kick this one off. But yeah, then again, this is again technical as well as complex. Uh, so supposed to
Yeah.
be where we are.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. We can get started again.
All right. So we looked at the AQL a bit, right? Before we go there, let's come back here and talk about right choices, right people, right time. So we looked at what happens with the customer or what particular options we can talk to for a customer, right? Now look at it from an agent perspective. And again, taking the same example, and it is a real example. I was previously working with an organization which struggled with it. So let's suppose somebody requests for a laptop. Let's continue on the same example, and you want to know how many laptop that this particular guy already has. So if you see, Gaurav Gupta requested this, and again, requesting it for testing an iOS feature. So a MacBook is requested, pretty straightforward. The approver again from the persona, I'll say tell you from where. So from the persona, it is picking up that okay, the employee is Gaurav, and the manager is set as approver. This is again coming from assets based on what we have set in the environment, right? So but the key aspect comes here. The employee already has 4 laptops. And the example I was telling you, the real life example, uh, we had an organization, a customer come to us. They were an organization of 3,000 to 4,000 employees at that time. Though they were expanding, but their laptop count was reaching 10,000. Imagine a 4,000 strong organization having 10,000 laptops. That's about 2.5 laptops per employee. So, and they never knew who owns what. Where are the, so if they are not allocated to an employee, where are the laptops residing? How do you address all of that? So here, if you see, this guy is requesting a laptop and already has 4 laptops. Not the ideal scenario in which you should allocate a laptop. You should definitely talk to the employee. You should definitely talk to the manager. Your organization should have a process for it, right? So in order to address all of that, This is what information surface at the right place at the right time means. I, as an agent, do not have to move away from my ticket. I am not moving out of the incident or the service request, searching through 10 different systems to understand where or how many laptops this particular guy has or this particular requester has. I am getting all of that information right at my fingertips, right in the incident. And this example could seem very trivial. Yeah, I can allocate another laptop. But think about it in the form of, let's say, a change management process. Or where, in change management, you can surface what your upstream and downstream applications are, where the impact would reside. Should it be a critical, or should it be a critical change in which you should get approvals from two different managers, or two levels, or three levels? So you can construct all those kind of scenarios once you are able to surface this information, right? Think of it beyond IT. Let's go beyond the IT realm. Think about HR. If an employee wants to ask for leaves, very simple example again, right? Very basic. Okay, they already have their leaves. They can apply from that. It would be auto approved. So okay, that is one scenario. But if the employee has exhausted their leaves, they want to still, for whatever reasons, need more leaves. What's my process around that? How do I know that employee has already consumed their leaves, or do they have a leave left out or not, right? Or which policy would apply in such a scenario? So you can surface all of that information right and in the incident or in the request, so that you don't go searching for 10 different documents, right? Again, that's information surfacing right at the right place at the right time. Okay, so workflow clutter, definitely you do not have to, let's say, reassign it to 10 different teams based on, or here in this case for the approval is auto set, that okay, whoever is the manager of the requester, they get the approval. And we can even further enhance the workflows based on what the process or how it is set up in your organization. You want two levels of approval, maybe one from the uh, requesters manager, the other maybe from the IT manager, your org level approver or somebody. You can set all of that within the system. So that's where, once you have the foundation laid, where you have well defined structure, you can surface all of this, right? Okay, all right, moving ahead. We talked about IT support, we talked about employee role location, or the employee HR use cases. Similar thing can be done for facilities, or again, facilities, the example which is on the screen, which is building, floor, room, pretty closely to defines a location where your server could be kept, so pretty close to that. But think about non-IT facilities assets. Maybe a company has ordered 100 chairs or 2000 chairs. Where each chair is kept, how many more chairs do you need? Think of it at an enterprise level, how much value it brings to the organization, right? It helps you make those decisions, make data driven decisions. It's not that okay, I can just simply order anything and everything which I want, which was happening in the previous example which I quoted, where the organization was 4,000 people strong and had 10,000 laptops, almost around that number. So what it does is, right across all scenarios, helps you make data driven decisions, right? All right, let's take a quick pause here and open the floor again if there are any questions. Sajid?
Uh, what? So Jen has a question. On average, how long does it take to stand up a CMDB? Average.
That's a loaded question, I would say, because there's no average per se. It depends upon what scenario you want to start off with, right? Uh, to give you an example, when I was talking about the previous organization, we were able to get them started in about 3 weeks with the standard basic template. Um, then we kept increasing or building on top of that. We built in data integrations, we built in data ingestion models. All of those were modeled afterwards. So as we talked last time, right, we start small, we pick up one use case. So for them the use case was very straightforward. They wanted to model their laptops, that how many laptops we have, how many employees we have, and getting a view of how we can set that up, who which laptop is allocated to which employee, and all of those basic details only. So that's one example. 2 to 3 weeks we got them started. Versus, if you remember last time I showed you an enterprise grade schema, and when we were working with that customer, we took about 5 to 6 months to come up with that schema, because they had a lot of stakeholders, they had a lot of uh, I would say garbage in their system already, which they wanted to get off. So we had to analyze what's there in the system, what is relevant to them, then talk to various teams and create that schema. So it really depends upon what your use case is, uh, and how quickly the customer wants it.
All right. So, Missy Horan says the 3 week turnaround you mentioned is with a dedicated resource to setting the CMDB up, correct?
It was around roughly around that, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And hence, don't go populating everything in your CMDB with all attributes and everything that is in your
Uh,
inventory, and typically becomes
that's
garbage
a
in, garbage out.
absolutely
Great point, Mickey.
so very correct.
Yeah.
As with AI, if you do not have a well-defined data layer, so it goes with CMDB.
So
If
goes with
it's
life.
Yeah, absolutely, with every aspect, right? So if you do not have a well-defined data ingestion mechanism, uh, it really very quickly becomes garbage,
Hmm.
and then people move away from it very fast,
Yeah.
right? You spend months building that, and if your processes on top of it are not well defined, and we'll talk about a lot about it in the next session because it's data oriented, governance oriented, uh, but those are the real key aspects in ensuring the data quality and ensuring adaptability and adoptability of your CMDB.
Hmm. Nice. Jen says, my focus is on applications mapped to process. So this is the follow up to the use case that, they
Mhm.
initially came. What could be an expected timeline?
So, applications mapped to processes, you can do it in about 3 to 4 weeks if you are starting off with one small application, let's say the pilot. You can do that, you can build that, provided the use case you are addressing, you have a well-defined process already. So
Hmm.
in Jen's case, it seems like she would have a process well defined. That's where she's thinking on those lines, which is the right direction to go. So I am pretty hopeful 3 to 4 weeks is a realistic time for her to go live with at least the first use case.
Nice. Missy asks, will you be talking about data asset manager at all during this series?
Absolutely. This series would be incomplete without that, Missy. So stay tuned for session 3. That's where we would be talking about data ingestion, data governance, all of that. Uh, and that's where asset manager or data asset manager would come into play.
Nice. Uh, PDF 150, that's a very unique username. Let me
Oh,
also
wow.
just said this. I'm interested in attributes that are relevant for almost all object types. As far as I know, there are only a few default systems like key name and created and updated.
Right. So, yeah, these are default attributes which are provided whenever you create an object type. Okay. But nothing stops you from creating more which can be inherited,
Hmm.
right? And then again, the reason for having only four and not more than that is uh, it gives you the flexibility of what you want to model, right? Because if you go beyond that, it could be one could be status, but not every object type would have a status for it.
Hmm. Makes sense.
So created is, let's say, when it is created, it captures that natively. Updated captures the last update time for that particular object natively. So these are the four. And again, if you want some common attributes across your schema, you can define those.
Nice. I think those are the questions as of now, Gaurav.
Great. All right. So let's get back. All right. Let's move ahead on this one. So if you understand this, this is where I would like people to speak about it, if they understand this, or if this makes sense to them, or nah, we want to discuss this. What about this?
Okay, people, let's use the chat.
It's really abstract, I would put it like that. And I put it purposefully here because this is what we have been talking about till now. What we were surfacing always is an object, then we were looking at particular attribute of an object. So if we go back to the first example where we surfaced three particular objects and not the fourth one, that was based on the attribute of the object, and that is where our decision logic resides. So we first have the object that, okay, we want to surface all the supported device types or laptop types. Then we want to have a decision or a control over one of the attributes. That's how we design it. That's how we think about it. So in the abstract, if you look at it, what we are trying to do is we are only trying to showcase the laptop types which are supported by the enterprise. And if we drill this particular statement down, so management would want, or the customer wants, hey, just show me only the laptop types from which I can order or request, right? They, sorry, they'll never ask you to hide the retired ones. No, they are just they'll give you a very business like statement that, okay, I want to see only the devices I can request for. You need to hide all of them. That's implicit, and that's where the decision lies, and the decision lies on the attribute of an object. So whenever you are building your or setting up your custom fields, think about it: what object you want to surface, which objects you want to surface. First is the what, or what objects you want to surface. Then out of those object types, based on the object type, which objects out of these, you can have hundreds or thousands of objects. So think about a real life scenario where an organization can easily have thousands of devices, laptops itself. If an organization is, let's say, an organization is like one of the big IT giants of out of India, based in India, like the Infosys or TCS, they have over a lakh employees, 100,000 employees, or 200,000 employees. Imagine the number of devices they would have. And if they want to build this system, how complex this simple decision would be. How many factors, how many attributes you will have to keep in mind when you're designing it for them. So this is on the, if we keep drilling it down, it comes to this particular one statement. You define the object, you define the attribute, and you then take a decision. I hope it makes sense now rather than, let's say, 5 minutes back when I actually presented this slide. Huh?
Yes,
Silence. Suggest
definitely.
any thoughts, any
No,
inputs
no.
from?
No,
Okay,
100% agree. I mean,
yeah,
people are saying there are some comments. Let me.
great.
Example: I want to surface all the sheep's object in my livestock inventory, but then I only want those sheeps that are black color attribute. Move them from another field for grazing, which is the decision.
Oh, absolutely, you can do that if you have designed your schema accordingly. So if you're capturing all your sheeps and then you're numbering all your sheeps, you need a unique identifier for your sheeps, right? Then you have your attributes that what color wool they are giving you, white or black or red or purple or whatever, right? Then if you have that, then it can provide you all of this information, that okay, select only the sheeps, from the sheeps build on wool color. That there's your decision, you can do all of that.
Do you?
Again,
Is
going beyond IT, this is something which I definitely love, because we are really experts at thinking about IT scenarios. For a simple reason, we work in IT day in day out. That's our bread
got
and butter.
one quick question before we move
Sure.
on. So, while we are, let's say, for example, can you go back to your earlier slide?
Sure, one sec.
Jacob, by the way, in the meantime, says my asset list is complex. We track everything from our team's manager, director, VP, software purchaser to attractions. I work for a theme park company. Oh, that's nice,
Oh
Jacob.
wow,
What park the attraction is in, etc. as well. That's a very interesting use case.
that's a real life non-IT use case. I would put it like that, because you would need to do maintenance of your
Yeah.
let's say swings and everything. So you would need to maintain an inventory of that. That okay,
Mm,
this kind of a motor needs let's say what do you call it, maintenance every 3 months. Last it was done this on 1st of March, and now it's due. So those kind
sure.
of alerts and those kind of nudges you would want from the system to provide you. That's what it is. And it
Yeah.
designing it would be a real challenge. I foresee that.
Yes. So coming back, so I wanted to ask this a very dumb question because that's something that came to my head the moment this slide came. I didn't thought that
Mhm.
maybe somebody will ask. Okay, does it have to be object, attribute, and decision? Can it pause at object and attribute in the beginning for teams to start working with? Because they might not want to have a decision. They might want to set up a database with an object and the correct attribute. They don't want to, let's say, for example, action. It's for data security, not data security, but for, let's say, reporting
Mhm.
purposes or some
Understood.
legal restriction or something like that. So there can be a scenario where you don't need to have that decision. You can stick to object and attribute to get started with.
Yes, but then you are not doing asset management, then you are doing asset inventory. And we
Great point.
touched this particular piece last time, because then what you're doing is you're surfacing every bit of information. And when you
Sure.
surface every bit of information, then management takes the back seat. Then it becomes more of an inventory. Then you are showcasing every asset which you have based on an attribute,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
So, or in that case, what you're doing is you are showcasing every object and particular attributes of that object. So, let's
Okay.
say in the example which we had, we would showcase that okay, three of the device types are active, whereas the fourth one is retired. So you would showcase just that piece. You're
Right.
not taking a decision of hiding that or just surfacing what is required, and that moves in the realm of asset inventory and not asset management.
Hmm. Great point. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. All right. Let's.
Good. Let's. Was it Jacob who is from the uh, other side? I completely forgot
Yeah. 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 The theme
what we had
park.
discussed before that. But interesting use case. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jacob? How you are setting up your CMDB, or which tool are you using for that matter?
While he responds, maybe we can, continue. I don't see a response from him yet,
Okay.
or maybe
Theme park.
it's a little confidential that he does cannot share.
Sure. Maybe not the tool name, but how
Yeah,
complex is your CMDB setup? How long did you take? If you could share those insights, that would actually be useful for the whole group, because what we always talk about is IT and very rare few non-IT use cases. This is a real one.
yeah.
Big theme
And the IT
parks.
use cases mostly revolve around these, right? Like laptops and like all the assets that companies have, and it just gets a little like it gets like ITSM. You can't go beyond ITSM in IT, so then you can't
That's
talk
where
about ESM.
that's where the world is shifting now. I would put it like that, because we have had enough of ITSM. Now we are
Hmm.
talking about SM, just last two words. And then once we start talking about SM, which is service management only, then it can penetrate into any vertical of your organization, be it HR again. Sorry to start with the HR, because I work with the HR pretty closely at times. So yeah, legal is another big aspect where you want to do that. Another one is vendor management.
Hmm.
It's very uh, you know um, gets very less limelight, but it's very critical, because
And
think about a large enterprise, how many vendors they interact with. Not And when we talk about vendor management, it's not only IT vendor management. They have vendors for a lot of other things. In our office buildings, we have got so many things we do not realize are provided by different vendors. There
hmm.
are a lot of complexities, contracts going around with those. How do you manage all of that? Vendor management system is really complex in its own right. So that's
Okay.
where it all boils down to.
Oh,
Another
Jacob.
aspect,
Sorry,
procurement.
Jacob has responded in the chat.
Oh
He
yeah.
says it's been years in the making. We've had Jira Insight assets since long before
Oh,
I took this role.
you're coming from the insight world. I love that. I really love that, Jacob. Uh,
OG.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, vendor management. If you see, the other aspect which is highly underrated is procurement.
Okay.
And just think from an IT perspective, it is easier for us to think on those lines what procurement goes through. Uh, so what it is you come to a point where your laptops go below a particular threshold, and then you want a signal to be sent to procurement to get new laptops. So procurement goes and have a complete procurement process where they might reach out to, let's say, three different vendors or five different vendors, get into the quoting process, all of that. Once they uh, or they might have a preferred vendor, different
Hmm.
organizations, different processes. Once you get those laptops, or once those laptops are assigned to your organization, your enterprise, how do you get them into the system? How do you track which invoice, which order number were they linked to? So all of that again is really complex.
Yeah.
So
Jen
that
has a question. She says, we have a program called Reliance that we use for data mapping. Can that be integrated into Atlassian to help with the CMDB?
Jen, I honestly I haven't come across this particular program which you are mentioning, Reliance. But then again, the best part about Sets is they have open APIs. So when we talk about Data Manager next time, we'll also talk about various mechanisms through which you can get data into Data Manager, and APIs is one of the bigger ones. So
Hmm.
if it's like your program called Reliance, is it like uh, if it's what do you call, based on if it can integrate with APIs, you can do that. I for sure know that we do not have a direct integration with Reliance as of now, but if there are flat files, or if it's a database like a SQL or an Oracle. So those are various ways through which you can integrate.
Nice.
So
All
those
right,
are
just
some.
a quick time check. We have 10 minutes remaining. Any more content that you wanted to cover today, Gaurav?
Yes, one thing as always, we'll definitely talk about some of the challenges, or some pitfalls which we should always avoid. So before this, the previous slide which I had was this one: procurement and change enablement. Yes, definitely we talked about these, so I skipped over those risks to address and very common mistakes. Something which I've learned over a period of time, making most of these. I've done most of these mistakes, I'll happily say that. So too many objects again. What you want to surface, be very clear about that. Define your use case very clearly as to what you want to provide this users. Otherwise what happens is cleaning it up at a later point of time becomes a bigger challenge, right? Workflow clutter as well as weak automation, again, both of them stem from the same logic as too many object choices. Because if you have too many object choices, then your workflow and your automation logic are weak. Because then you start thinking about way too many options, that okay, the if the requester selects option A or the agent selects option A, I need to have this. So then you get into the realm of over engineering as well. That's where restricting it at the first step, where you limit the number of objects or number of choices which you are giving to the consumer. That's what you need to address on day one and very quickly, right? Last but not the least is IT only thinking. And I have been guilty of it. I won't shy away from saying that. We only think from a perspective that, yeah, it's laptop allocation. It would be somebody would request a laptop. No, it can be triggered from four different areas. Maybe the HR triggers it. Maybe the facility wants some different variation of it. How do you bring that variation without breaking your existing process, or without completely changing the way it is structured today? So those are some of the things which you should address, or before you put it into the system, right? So getting, as we say, on the drawing board, you define all of this and think about all the potential options you might have. So those are some of the risks which I would definitely highlight. Again, this is what we discussed during the call, during this session, and that's it. That's all I had for today, from a sharing perspective. But then again, would love to discuss it a little more if you have any further use cases, uh, and all of that.
Uh, Jacob says he has 60 plus different schemas, a total of
Wow.
30,000 objects.
I would say the number of objects as compared to schema are really comparatively low,
Hmm.
not undermining the overall complexity, Jacob, in any which way. Uh, it only stems from my experience working with some of the customers where they had only two or three schemas and had over 180,000 objects at time. So I have seen
Hmm.
those kind of schemas as well. Uh, so that is something which is comparatively less, but the complexity, I can simply imagine what complexity you would be working with.
Yeah, he also says I'm trying to figure out some automation problems. When I look up an automation object in automation, I put in my AQL, but I get no objects returned. But when I go to assets and use the same AQL, it works.
A pretty common problem, because what I can envision is when you're putting your AQL in your automation, it is not picking up the context. So what you do is you are directly going to the uh, assets setup and running that particular AQL, where you would say that, okay, my object type is this, and let's say my attribute A should be alpha, attribute B or attribute 2 should be beta, and something of those sorts. that sometimes does not get picked, or that exact context might not be picked. Another scenario is if you are not closing the loop in the automation, you're not, if your schema has two different object types which have similar or same attribute name, that's where the confusion can also come in, and automation would not provide you the exact result.
Hmm. Nice. All right. Our good friend Dhruvil says, I've had legal, HR, payroll, procurement, security, facilities all on JSM, but multiple disconnected non Atlassian tools where assets were tracked.
Yep, very common scenario. A lot of companies, what we see is use one tool for service management, a different tool for asset management, uh, and then there is no interaction, no linkage between the two,
How do
right?
you convince a company like that to use JSM assets? Because that's what Dhruvil is asking.
So, see, it's not about convincing them to use GSM assets per se,
Yeah,
but
of course.
ask them what value these two disconnected siloed systems are providing you. So
Hmm.
when you talk about value proposition, that's where these concepts or these discussions fall apart or bring value to the customer. Because see, very simple example, I tell them upfront, I am somebody who has always had multiple devices allocated to myself. How do you track such employees? How do you know that Gaurav has four devices and is now requesting a fifth one? If you have siloed systems, what you do is your agent who is addressing the query, who is addressing that request, gets the request in system A, goes to system B. Now, to give you an example, Gaurav Gupta is a very common name, right?
Yeah,
You search for Gaurav Gupta in the Indian context. So sorry,
of
not in
course.
the global context. In the Indian context, Gaurav Gupta is a common name. So uh, I've had multiple numbers added in front of my name for the corporate IDs. So yeah, it's a common name. So how do you identify that the Gaurav Gupta which you searched in your siloed asset system is the right one? So you need to again identify which Gaurav Gupta is has raised the request, and you're searching for the same one. So basically, the agent is spending a lot of time in doing something which the system can do for them, and it does not have to be siloed.
Sure.
This is one very simple example. Think about in terms of change or release management aspect. When a development team wants to deploy or an incident has happened, how do you identify who the service owner is, who
Hmm.
is the on-call person? How do you get all of this information? What are your upstreams and downstreams of that particular service which has gone down? What would be the blast radius of this particular incident? How many users would be impacted? How many applications would be impacted? How do you get all of this information from two siloed systems?
Makes sense.
Right? So when you talk about one consolidated single ecosystem, just like JSM, right, or the Atlassian world we are talking about, it provides all of them the same context, same value, same details. So you surface that information. So you get to know what the blast radius is, you get to know what's the upstream, what services are impacted, who the owners are, who the approvers are, who the stakeholders are. All of that information is right at your fingertips.
Makes sense.
Right?
Perfect. We are right up on time. I'm sure Gaurav has other commitments that he would want to, honor as well. So if you have any questions, please use the chat for the next session. We will definitely first pick up the questions from the chat before we continue. Uh, Dhruvil has a great closing point. More than a value problem, the culprit has usually been friction of moving to a new system or a tool. 100% agreed, Dhruvil. Yes, that's it.
That is always there.
Yeah,
That is always there. So you need see you need to start from the value proposition
yeah,
and then address and ally those fears that okay, it's a problem, it's a known problem. And what's the value of not moving on, or
Yeah,
what you are losing if you do not do
if you
this
do
change?
not move.
Yes. So that's where you need to get them thinking that if what you're losing out,
Yeah.
give them a bit of a FOMO, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Gaurav, for sharing these valuable tips with us, along with, of course, your knowledge. If you have any questions, once again, please use the chat. There will be an email. If you are joining us from CSX Masters, we'll send you a link with the first and the second video together. Do subscribe to the QuizWiz channel. There are a bunch of masterclasses that are in pipeline. We are also doing one for AI in the coming weeks with Dr. Valerie, of course, the face of AI for her Atlassian ecosystem, and a bunch of other events, of course, are happening in QuizWiz every other day. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you on the next one, which is, I believe, on the 24th, which is 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gaurav, once again.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye bye.